This blipvert is made possible with the help of angelspit's Patreon. Become a member, cause it's cooler than being in the Illuminati. Plus we have cooler parties. And you get a free track in blipvert each month. Join angelspit's Patreon and become a child of distortion. This blipvert suggests some ideas to improve bass lines. I don't consider myself as someone who writes amazing bass lines, but I'm always on the lookout for advice, so here's some I've collected. Also, when you watch this, I suggest you use headphones, as some of the examples in this blipvert use low bass frequencies. So if you want to improve your bassline chops, the first thing I would do is suggest listening to music with solid bass lines. Learn from the best. For example, listen to Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder, Daft Punk, Devo, P-Funk, Duran Duran, Daft Punk, AC/DC, Rage Against the Machine, and Daft Punk. Many of these bands use bass lines that are simple, memorable, and funky. I personally think a good bass line is melodic, memorable, rhythmic, and funky. Let's look at these different elements. A bass line with a strong melody, or riff, will add a great unique flavor to your track. People seem to be drawn to tracks with strong, melodic, riff-driven basses. There's a musical scale which is memorable and easily digestible. It's called the minor pentatonic scale. The easiest place to find this scale is by playing all the black notes on a keyboard. You'll be able to play most of the classic bass lines on all the black notes. For ultimate funk, we're going to start on E flat, then G flat, then A flat, then B flat, then D flat, then back to E flat. Here's me screwing around with the minor pentatonic on my beloved Mini Moog. You'll notice I am the worst keyboard player in the world. Now for some extra spice, add an E natural and an A natural. The E natural is what's called a minor second. It's one semitone away from the E flat. Have a listen. Now this is a really popular note with darker music. The A natural is what's called a diminished fifth. It's the note for anything dark. Listen to the darkness. It's also called a tritone, which was excommunicated from the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages because they believed it would summon Satan. But when you listen to a lot of the choral music of that time, it's full of diminished fifths. Because when you go from like a major 5 to a major 1, there's a diminished fifth in there. Hail Satan. Because everybody likes it dark. Usually, the job of the bass is to inspire you to dance, and a powerful tool is syncopation. Syncopation is when the bass dances on and around the beat, usually by displacing notes by a 16th. So instead of notes hitting on the beats and the eighths, it hits on the 16th before or after the 8th. Let's add some syncopation. So first, here's a regular bass line. Pretty stock standard bass line, 126 BPM, bam! So now let's add some syncopation to that bass line. So I've taken those 3 notes and I've moved them back a 16th. And I did the same thing in bar number 2. It's a really cool thing to notice with groove here. Avoid the 3. So go a 16th either side of the 3. That gets called the Manchester feel. I don't know why, it just does. James Brown promoted the idea of the one, where all the instruments would emphasize the first beat, and often it was the first beat of a 2-bar phrase. The idea was that everybody could be as syncopated and crazy as they want, as long as everybody hits the one. So to do something a little bit cool, I muted the first note of the 2nd bar. So it's just got a little breath in there. It's got a pa in there. Have a listen. Now there's a really cool extension on this idea, and that's when everybody, or all instruments, slams down on the fourth beat of the second bar. This has the effect of holding your breath before the punch of the one. It actually also got called bunny hopping. Bam! Breathe, bam! Listen to Bootsy Collins. He's the master of the one. Groove quantizing is a subtle and effective way of increasing the funk. Now, please note, different software uses different terms, so it's going to be called groove quantizing or whatever. Now, this technique uses quantizing to push the timing into a more shuffle or triplet feel. Now, please note, this could be problematic with tempos over 130 BPM, because the faster the tempo, the more the triplet becomes unstable. The triplet plays with the off 16ths, so it's not the eighths, it's the 16ths between the eighths, and it pushes them towards the triplet. So the faster you go, the more things start falling apart. It could be cool, I don't know. Now this is really subtle, and to make it easier to hear, I've added a 16th off on the hi-hat, so you'll hear it working with the hi-hat. And if I zoom in here, you'll notice that that is ever so slightly off the 16th, like by milliseconds. So this is a 22% groove quantize. I actually did the hi-hat with a 16% groove quantize. So the hi-hat and the bass line are different groove quantizing, and do that if you really want to get the funk happening. It's very subtle, but it's there. If you want, we can go even more. So let's go a little bit more extreme here so you can hear it. Okay, so for the sake of the example, we're going to go up to 40% to see what it sounds like. And it sounds like this. You can really hear that swing coming into it. Now, just for the sake of the example, let's pump it right up. We're going to pump it up to 75. Bam. Sounds like this. You can really hear it there. You can even hear at 126 BPM, it's starting to struggle a little bit. It's not sounding natural. So to my ears, it sounds more natural, you know, mid-20s. Awesome. Try and make every bass line as unique as you can. So if you only heard the bass without the beat or the music, you could recognize what song it's from. And I gotta warn you, that is one hell of a challenge. We've just discussed two really important core elements, the notes and the rhythms. Now, I think it's equally important to make the bass line unique by the choice of the sound. In this video, I am using the king of bass synthesizers, the Moog Voyager, and it's on most angelspit tracks. Yes, I know I should be using a mini Moog Model D, but you can make a Voyager sound like a Model D, but you can't make a Model D sound like a Voyager. Trust me on that one. The Voyager wins because it can completely modify the sound in real time using MIDI controllers. So you can change filter, resonance, guide, attack, decay, sustain, syncing, everything. You can do all of it. And this will allow you to flip the sound around in the most insanely awesome way. Let's use Portamento or glide to slide between each note. Now to turn Portamento on, you have to turn on controller 65. Then using controller 5, you actually specify how much Portamento you're going to have. So a lot is a slow, it moves from one note to the other slowly, and a small amount, it moves really quickly. So this is our bass line with Portamento. yeah. I love this bit up here. So now for some extra fun, I'm actually going to add controller 1, which is modulation. That's the wee thing. This is sex. Check it out. Right there. Next, let's use some spice and play around with the filters a bit. We're going to be adding controller 19, which is the filter cutoff. Now, interestingly, not all synthesizers register controller 19 as filter cutoff. It changes from synthesizer to synthesizer just to make your life hell. But 19 seems kind of standard, so this is it with filter. That's kind of fun. So let's just compare that to the original idea. And we ended up with this madness. That's really fun. Here's a crazy idea. Learn to play bass and write the bass lines on a bass guitar. The worse your bass playing skills, the better, because mistakes often yield to unexpected happy accidents. I personally suck at bass. I can only play the bottom fat string. My abilities are so limited, it forces me to try something different. I have no idea what notes I'm playing. It just sounds cool. Whereas with a keyboard, I know exactly what notes I'm playing, so it's kind of like, boring. Some bass lines actually follow the vocal, making the bass sing, not just play a static pattern. If you want to hear a really good example of this, listen to the Smiths and try not to kill yourself. So now we're going to try something that's a really mathematical approach, but it often yields something really cool. Try this. You're going to write a really short bass pattern comprising of 2/8 notes. Now you're going to repeat this every 3 notes. So what we've got going here is octave leaps. So the notes I've chosen are just E's 1 octave apart. Bump, bump, super easy. Sounds like this. That's kind of cool. Now, write a short pattern comprising of 3/8 notes. Now repeat this pattern every 5/8 notes. I've gone back to the E and the octave up E, and this time I've thrown in a G. So it sounds like this. Maths is wonderful. Okay, cool. Now, write a short pattern comprising of 5/16 notes. Now repeat this pattern every 5/8 notes. So I've added some controller information to the filter. So the filter is going to be opening and closing with each note. And I also added some Portamento. So it sounds like this. The guy at the end is going into the abyss. The abyss is a good place to be. Sex, take me to the abyss. Overlapping prime numbers is so much fun, but when you start getting into the Fibonacci cycle, stuff gets crazy. Play with mathematics in music, it's just amazing. Now write a short pattern comprising of 3/8 notes, but now repeat it on the 3rd beat, but make that repeat 1/16 early. As you'll notice, what I've done here is I've actually added a note on the 4th. There's the first part of the cycle, there's the second part of the cycle. The second part of the cycle is moved ahead early 1/16. If I didn't add that note there, it'd sound like this. I think that's really cool, but it just felt like it needed something to complete the beat, to complete the funk. Sounds like this. Good fun. So if you want to add extra dimension and color and emotion to your music, try a bass that sits on the 3rd or the 5th of the chord instead of the root, the first note. The 3rd and the 5th add a really interesting extra emotional inflection to the chords. So you'll notice here the bass line is just following the chords. All minors, that's A minor, up to C minor, to E flat minor, back to C minor. So, angelspit, I am such a cliche. Here's using thirds and fifths on the bass. Starts with the root note, then down to the fifth, then the minor third, then the minor third. Now it's really cool, you'll notice that that adds this really interesting emotional pleading to the song, which is kind of cool. So now we're going to move between the first, the third, or the fifth of each chord, and it sounds like this. It's really cool because those chords have a lot of mystery in it and a lot of darkness. And when you use notes that aren't just the root bass note, you're allowing the audience to really explore the darkness and the relationship between all of those chords. And that's where stuff gets really delicious. Last word, go watch the blipvert I did on Basslines a million years ago. It's the one where I had no eyebrows. I really want to get rid of my eyebrows again. God, I look so corporate now. So now go forth and weaken floorboards and collapse buildings with your wicked bass skills. Rah!